commissioning training. This is a really important topic. I've actually gone so far as to say this is 50% of the success of a training, maybe even more, as how well commissioned it is. So what is commissioning if you're not so corporate, if that's a new word? Well, it's how you arrange the training, who you arrange it with, how you determine the goals of the training. That's vital. I'll come back to that. How you get the buy-in perhaps from different people. So at some point, if you get asked to do a training session, and it could be a coaching session, it could be a group session, someone will say, hey, I've been given your number, I've seen your website, or however they got in contact with you. Useful to know from a marketing point of view, but anyway, can you do this? And they might say, we've got someone with an anger management issue, can you fix them? And the first thing I say is, well, do they want to do it? What do you mean by fix? What's the outcome you're wanting? How much time do you have? How much money do you have? I've actually got a list of about 30 questions that's pinned to my dashboard that I still look at. A friend of mine who's a trainer, Harry Puckering, gave me it 10 years ago, and I still occasionally look at it because those questions are really important. Let me take you through some of the assumptions that you might be making that are very, very dangerous. So what's the space? Do they have a space? Sometimes people have agreed a price and they've said, oh, we expect you to provide a training room. And I've gone, oh shit, I've just lost half my budget, half my money from having to buy a room, right? How big is the room? Does the room have a boardroom table in the middle that can't be moved, which for embodied work, possible, but tricky. Is there natural light? I've been stuck in corporate training rooms with zero natural light. I was in one the other day in Moscow, which was all chrome and metal and black and silver and hard edges. And it was just like, this wasn't conducive. And we ended up getting some flowers in there, you know, just to soften it out a bit. So there's a training room. The key one though, key one, aim and buy-in. So let me start there actually. So what do they want? Okay, what do they actually want to get from the training? Before you can, with integrity, say yes and take someone's money, you need to be able to be confident, I would say, not always certain, but confident you can deliver. So what are the outcomes? How will you know if this is training is a success? Under what conditions would you say the training wasn't a success? What is it you actually want to be different after this coaching or this training? So super, super critical. Some people say, I've got half a day for team building and I want everyone to never argue again. I'm like, that's not going to happen. Maybe I could help a little bit with group coherence, but you know, it's not that there's never going to be a conflict. Or transform these leaders into empathic, emotionally intelligent leaders. I'm like, do I have 2 years, 3 years? Oh, 2 days? Maybe not going to happen. I can give them some tips, however. Would that be helpful? Or if there's 100 people, there's another thing to determine. How many people is it for? One time I was on the phone for about half an hour and I just assumed it was one group of people, which is normally 15 to 30 in a corporate context. My normal limit for one trainer, by the way, is 20. I say after that, I ask for a second trainer. So it does affect things like budget. Anyway, after talking to this person for about half an hour, she said something like, okay, so it's going to be about 600 people. And I went, what? I just haven't even considered it could have been that many. And all of a sudden I'm like, have I got enough associate trainers? Are we going to have the room going to be big enough? You know, entirely transformed the idea of the training with 600 people. You know, I've done trainings for hundreds of people, but it's a very different training. I need a slideshow maybe, I need assistance, I need miking up, you know, it's very different things. So yeah, the number of people, the outcome though is the key thing. Back to the buy-in. The person commissioning the training, buying the training, arranging the training, may not be the person in the training. Okay, so it might be, I want some coaching, that's easy. Often, particularly in a business or organizational context, it's a HR manager or a training manager, or maybe a CEO of a small company. And they say, oh, you know, the problem is everyone's stressed. You can do them a stress workshop. And then you come and do the workshop and I find out, oh, the problem's everyone's badly managed. That's why we're stressed. Would have been better off doing management training with the CEO rather than stress training with the employees, yeah? So there could be multiple what's called stakeholders. You know, there's the HR person, the CEO that she works for, the middle managers, and then the other people that work for them. Well, who's the training for exactly? Do they all have the same outcome? You know, and let's take a stress workshop. Well, employees might just want to be happier. Management might want them more productive. There's a lot of crossover in those things, but those two things do not cross over entirely. So it's well worth arranging up front, like who's this for? And are people bought in, meaning do they want the training, yeah? So if someone's, for example, anger management training, if someone doesn't think they have an anger management issue and they get sent to me, it can be a pain in the ass. They can be like, I'm not angry, just everyone else is an idiot. Okay, it's like, well, okay, there's not much I can do at that point then because they're not wanting to be trained. Yeah, so there's ways around that, and establishing buy-in is something you should be doing on any training anyway. At the beginning of training, even if people have come, I'll be like, okay, why have you come? What do you want to get out of it? Re-establishing aims, re-establishing motivations. You know, how would your life be different if you were able to do this? And let's say the guy doesn't really care about his productivity, but he might care about his stress that he brings home to his kids. Yeah, so re-establishing buy-in, re-establishing motivation, getting buy-in, you know, doing it early, getting people involved. I'll often get on the phone and talk to someone at the organization confidentially, that's important, who isn't in the organizational management structure. And I'll talk to the, usually there's like someone at the front desk that knows what's really going on. It's like the doctor's receptionist. And I'll be like, I'll make friends with them. And I say, how stressed is everyone? Or why is everyone stressed around here? It's like, oh, we had cutbacks, we don't have enough staff. So I say, okay, well, I can teach them meditation, but if you've got 10 people trying to do 15 people's jobs, then the meditation is just enabling at best, right? So I like to get permission up front with the organization to do that, to give management recommendations. I'm staying with the example of the stress workshop, is something I do quite often. And yeah, so that way I can give recommendations about management, about staffing levels, about systems and structures and HR. You know, one time I was working with an NGO and I said, well, the problem is no one's taking their holiday. And they actually had to make the holiday mandatory because a lot of aid workers won't take their holiday because they've got this whole Save the World thing going on, and actually made it mandatory for them to take their holiday. It was actually a HR structure that enabled people to take some rest because they wouldn't do it for themselves. So it's a bit of an unusual problem that you might not have thought about. Okay, so the buy-in, the motivation, the different stakeholders, making sure that's all arranged. The practicalities I mentioned, there's about 50 practicalities you can think of, like anything like, do they have a projector or whiteboard? Bring your own pens, there's my little top tip. Yeah, the space that you're in. Do people generally turn up on time? Is that culturally normal? The pre-work, this is really critical actually. How is it framed? So sometimes people turn up and they're like, I've been told I have to be here. And I'm like, well, have you chosen to be here? I personally will only teach people that have chosen to be there and aren't pressured, though I sometimes get lied to, if I'm honest. That's personal preference. If you definitely have to get the buy-in if they've been told to be there. Anyway, so what have they been told beforehand? Like, it's some training, or you're some bloke, or have they been sent, here's the training, here's a video of the guy. I like to send video because then people kind of feel like they know me, so kind of speeds up the trust building process, which is critical to training. Yeah, has it been pre-worked? Have they come with an established aim? I like to get people to think about their aims beforehand. If you're doing EFC, you've probably had this. Like, what is your aim? Why are you coming to EFC? Yeah, why? What do you want to get out of this training? So they've been thinking about the subject beforehand. There may be some sort of an assessment, like, okay, think about what gave you stress in the last week. So they come and they're already warmed up, because often the contact time is not as much as you would like. So you're able to make the most of that contact time by establishing a bit more trust, giving them some information ahead of time, getting them to think about it ahead of time. And then equally, there may be post-work after that. And again, this needs to be included in the actual commissioning. Yeah, there's that. And then again, costing. So cost would be another one. I mean, that's a whole subject, how to cost it. My basic rule is charge as much as you can and then decide if you want to make it accessible. So what I mean by that is like, okay, what's the maximum amount you can charge? And then you can make a decision, is that maximum in this organization actually what you want to work for or not? And is there an accessibility thing where you go, you know what, they're only willing to pay this, or they can only afford this, but I really want to support their goals. You know, I'll charge Globocore more than I'll charge Oxfam, right? Based on my values and wanting to support them. Yeah, I mean, looking at what else is in the market, this is all part of the commissioning process. I usually ask them to speak first in negotiation about price. I'll say, what is your budget, rather than give them a price. And that way, if it's higher than I thought I was going to charge, great, no problem. It just sets a realistic expectation. There's a whole art to that in terms of negotiation, but that's part of the commissioning process, is establishing price and having that clear beforehand. Okay, so you're establishing what it's for, if you can meet that goal, who it's for, learning about who it's for, talking to them, getting as many details. Is someone's boss going to be in the room? That will affect the training if someone's boss is there, for example. Other relationships between people in the room, culture, age, gender. These are things I ask about beforehand to get, as people all speak English as a first language. There's so much you can ask. Who's there? What do they want? Getting the buy-in. What's the follow-up? When are you going to get paid? Are you going to get paid for straight away or 3 months later, as one of my corporate clients likes to pay? They hang on to the money as long as possible. Is that part of the actual, when you're commissioning it, is that part of the deal? And then contracting it, what happens if you get ill and can't make the training? God, I could go on. I hope this has at least opened up the subject for you. The most important ones there: who's it for, what they want to get out of it, and negotiating the different stakeholders, different people involved. So, introduction to commissioning, training and coaching.